Welcome to Resilience and Assertiveness. This is a skill building program for people with Dupuytren's disease. My name's Eleanor Shakiba. I'm a positive psychology trainer and a member of the Dupuytrens tribe. The aim of this series is to help to give you a toolkit for managing the emotional impact of having Dupuytren's disease and to give you some skills in being able to speak up assertively when you're dealing with doctors and treatment specialists. So, let's have a look at some of the questions that are likely to be in your mind when you have Dupuytren's disease.
Dupuytren's disease, as everyone knows, really it's quite a genetic disease. Probably about 80% of the predisposition to getting Dupuytren's is caused by genetic factors. But there are also non-genetic predisposing factors such as alcohol intake and smoking, BMI. So if you have a higher weight, if you're more obese, you're actually protected from Dupuytren's. It's the only disease really that I know where that's the case. But we're interested really in what those genetic factors are that predispose everyone to Dupuytren's disease, and really finding out what they tell us about the biology of the disease and whether we can alter that biology in order to create new treatments for our patients.
So maybe we don't really know the answer to the question, why you? But I do want to stress something really important. You didn't bring this on yourself. Although something like an injury or a trauma might have triggered Dupuytren's disease, you didn't cause it. Let's have a look at what happens when you worry. Worry involves projecting yourself into the future. And what I want you to recognize about this is it is purely an imaginary process. Now, it might not be possible to stop negative thoughts coming into your mind, but there is a lot you can do to challenge those negative thoughts. I like to use starter phrases to do this. So here's a couple of examples of things you might say to yourself when a negative thought pops into your mind. So you might say something like, right now, my situation is that I only have one cord and no contraction. So you might do that in order to keep things in perspective. Another technique might be to think about evidence. You might say to yourself, there's no evidence that my imaginary catastrophic disaster scene is actually going to become reality. A third technique is to remind yourself that what you see on the internet is either likely to be a worst case scenario or may not in fact actually be factual. So you might remind yourself that the stories on the internet are not necessarily going to be your story. A fourth technique is to remind yourself that there's something you can do to cope today and tomorrow, to really narrow your frame of reference. So you're not thinking about the future, you're just thinking about how you're going to cope right now. And finally, another starter phrase that can be useful is, here are the things that lie within my control right now. This helps you to focus on what you can take action about. If you're asking yourself the question, why me? Chances are you're ruminating. This is a state in which you obsessively go over and over the same thought or the same question in a way that makes you feel helpless or out of control. It's important to break this pattern, and to do this, you need to use some attention shifting techniques. Instead of pondering something that you've got no control over, like the why question, it's important to focus on what you do know and what you can control. Remember that when you create an action plan, you're putting yourself in control of your next steps.
Good morning. My name is Ian and I'm a retired nurse. I've been asked to answer 3 questions related to my Dupuytren's disease. The first question: how did you seek advice on treatment and come to a decision what you wanted when you were first diagnosed? When I was first diagnosed, it was one small nodule, clinically diagnosed by my primary care physician. At that stage it was barely noticeable and I had no discernible symptoms. I decided to adopt a wait-and-see strategy. Some years later, when Accord and Contracture were developing, I researched using the internet. Being a clinician was a help in sorting out the useful information. Second question: what were your worries and thoughts about the treatments and possible after effects when making a decision? I decided the least invasive option was the least likely to have potentially negative effects, and that's the direction I chose. Question 3. What were your worst fears about this disease when you were diagnosed? I always try and stay positive and have a whatever will be attitude to life. Naturally, I temper that with choosing a course that I believe will give the best outcome. I have had to manage and to an extent fight our healthcare system to get what I want, but they are my hands and I have got the treatments I chose. My direction of choice has been to minimise the likelihood of amputation. Thank you.
Did you notice as Ian talked how he used words like control and make decisions? These are really important words to be using both internally and externally when you're managing Dupuytren's disease. Ian's story demonstrates the benefits of clearly taking action and working out what you can do next. This is all about building an action plan that makes you in charge of your own destiny. Here are a few tips that you can use for creating a sense of having a clear action plan for your condition. It's important to remember that your action plan is very likely to change over time. As you interact with more specialists and support groups and fellow patients, you're going to learn a lot of new tips and get lots of new information. Focusing on turning all of that into a practical action plan can help you to reduce feelings of helplessness, anxiety, or pessimism. And the reason that this happens is that when you're action planning, what you're doing is solution-focused thinking. This is an approach which shifts your attention away from having a problem and how bad the problem is, and helps you to find solutions. The whole concept of solution-focused thinking is based on the principle that the questions you ask yourself subtly influence the answers that you're going to find in life.
Here's an example. If I ask the question, how many pink question marks are on the screen right now, your mind will go to a place of counting. If I then ask how many green question marks were on the screen, it's quite likely that you're not going to know the answer. That's because my question focused your attention on pink only.
Likewise, if you keep asking yourself, why do I have Dupuytren's disease? You won't be looking for steps you can take to manage your condition. So try thinking of other, more solution-oriented questions that you can ask yourself. For example, the point of asking yourself solution-focused questions is to trigger creative thinking and to help you feel like there is something that you can be responsible for. Here is some food for thought around this.
One thing that I have really learned throughout the years of dealing with Dupuytren's disease is don't let it stop you from doing anything that you want to do. Keep doing the hobbies that you love. Keep doing the things that make you unique. If you want to wear padded gloves to help protect you, then absolutely do that, but don't stop. Don't be afraid that you're going to have to eventually give up the things that you love to do. You may have to get a little creative. You may have to start doing things a little differently, but don't give up.
Trying to remain positive is not easy. Being told you have an incurable condition that is affecting the use of your hands and may affect other body parts as well, feet, shoulders, the penis for men, is a shock, and you wonder how much this will affect you and what's going to happen. But I learned not to dwell on that too much, as it may or may not happen. You can't control it. So you adjust to what changes happen in your body and make the best of what you still have and still can. Look for the positive. Try not to fear the negatives, because they may never happen.
Of course, having a potentially progressive disease like Dupuytren's disease is challenging. To thrive despite that challenge, you need to manage your mindset as well as managing your physical state. The evidence from positive psychology is really clear. Resilient people focus on managing one day at a time. They turn rumination into specific and concrete action planning, and they don't ask, why me? They ask, now that it is me, what do I choose to do about my situation?